February 1944, high above Belgium, 19,000 feet in the sky. The big American bomber shook hard as pieces of metal tore through its belly. Captain David Chen felt the steering controls go loose in his hands. One of the 4 engines stopped working. The big spinning blade at the front of the engine locked up with a terrible screech that he could hear through the whole airplane. They were 93 miles from safety in England. Chen's co-pilot, Lieutenant Stevens, already had his hand on the alarm that would tell everyone to jump out with their parachutes. "Sir, we need to get out of here." "Not yet."
"Not yet,"
Chen said. His voice was calm, but his mind was racing. He was doing math in his head. The math of staying alive. 3 engines still working. Losing height at 150 feet every minute. German fighter planes everywhere. And the rest of the American bombers had already flown away toward their target. They kept going without stopping. That was the rule. One damaged airplane couldn't slow down the whole group. Above and behind them, Captain William Pierce saw the big bomber fall behind. His fighter plane, a P-51 Mustang with the name Carolina Rose painted on the side, turned to circle around the damaged bomber. Pierce was 26 years old. He grew up on a tobacco farm in North Carolina. He had flown 68 missions over Europe. He knew what happened to bombers that fell behind. The German fighters would hunt them down. Pierce looked at his fuel gauge. It showed 49 minutes of flying time left. He pressed the button on his radio. "Big bomber, this is Rose Leader. I can see you. I'm here to protect you." Chen's voice came back through the crackling radio. "Rose Leader, we're losing fluid from our control systems. We can't stay at this height." "I understand. I'm staying with you," Pierce said. It was a promise he had no permission to make. England was 78 miles to the northwest. The bomber was barely moving at 135 miles per hour. The math was simple and cruel. He didn't have enough fuel to escort them all the way home. The mission had started before sunrise that morning. They took off from an airbase in England. Chen and his crew of 10 men were flying their 22nd mission. 300 American bombers took off that morning to bomb German railway yards. The military planners said there wouldn't be many German fighters to stop them. The military planners were completely wrong. The Germans threw everything they had into the sky. Dozens and dozens of German fighter planes rose up from airfields all over the area. The sky became a deadly battlefield. American bombers fell from the sky, on fire, spinning down toward the ground. Pieces of metal and men fell through the air. Parachutes opened like white flowers against the gray clouds. The American fighter planes tried to protect the bombers, but they couldn't fly far enough. Their fuel tanks were smaller. At the German border, they had to turn back. Their fuel was almost gone. Chen's bomber got hit during the first attack by German fighters. A cannon shell smashed through the clear nose of the plane, wounding 1 crew member. Then the anti-aircraft guns on the ground started firing. Pieces of hot metal punched through the thin walls of the airplane. They cut important control cables. The ball turret gunner, a man named Sergeant James Walsh, got hit in the right arm by metal fragments. Now, 15 minutes after falling behind, they were dropping through 18,000 feet. Stevens worked desperately to restart the dead engine. Nothing happened. The big blade at the front just spun uselessly in the wind, slowing them down. Even worse, the hydraulic fluid that powered their controls was leaking out. Without that fluid pressure, the gun turrets couldn't turn. The bomb bay doors hung half open, catching the wind like a brake. "Captain," Stevens said quietly, "we should tell everyone to jump out." Chen stared at the land below. It was all controlled by Germany. Men who jumped out and parachuted down would become prisoners of war. That is, if they even survived the jump. And sometimes friendly resistance fighters on the ground helped American airmen escape, but the chances were bad. And Walsh was wounded. Could he even pull his parachute cord with an injured arm? "Not yet," Chen said again. Above them, Pierce kept watching the sky, his eyes moving constantly. His fighter plane had 6 machine guns in the wings. They held 1,880 bullets total. That was enough for about 23 seconds of continuous shooting. He had already used 400 bullets fighting German planes near the target earlier. Something moved in the sky. Pierce's head snapped to the right. 4 German Focke-Wulf 190 fighters came down from the clouds. They were painted in grey and green camouflage patterns. They had found the wounded bomber. This would be an easy kill for them. Pierce didn't wait. He pushed the throttle lever forward, and his fighter plane climbed up to meet them. The powerful engine roared, pushing him forward with all its strength. The lead German pilot saw him coming and turned hard to the left. Pierce fired a burst of bullets at long range. He wasn't trying to shoot them down. He was trying to break up their attack formation. Glowing tracer bullets streaked through the space between them. The German fighters scattered in different directions. Pierce focused on the nearest one and closed in to 400 yards. He squeezed the trigger. All 6 machine guns fired at once. The German fighter's wing exploded in flashes. Pieces broke off. The fighter rolled upside down and dove towards the earth, trailing black smoke behind it. The other 3 German fighters climbed higher, regrouping at 22,000 feet. Inside the bomber, the crew heard Pierce's guns firing, and they understood. Someone was up there protecting them. Before we continue with this incredible story, if you're finding yourself on the edge of your seat right now, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps us share these amazing true stories with more people who need to hear them. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now so you don't miss what happens next. "Rose Leader, you're using up your fuel," Chen said over the radio. "You should go home." "No way. I'm escorting you all the way to the English Channel." Pierce replied. The Channel. That was 78 miles away. At 135 miles per hour, that would take 34 minutes. Pierce looked at his fuel gauge again. It showed 37 minutes left. It was going to be very close, dangerously close. The big bomber kept sinking lower, down through 17,000 feet, then 16,000. Chen fought to slow down how fast they were dropping, but the laws of physics controlled things now. 3 engines couldn't keep them at high altitude with all the battle damage and the bomb bay doors hanging open creating drag. At 15,000 feet, they flew through a cloud bank. When they came out the other side into clear air, Pierce immediately spotted trouble. 6 more German Messerschmitt 109 fighters in attack formation, coming straight at them. The Germans had called for backup. More fighters were joining the hunt. Pierce positioned his fighter plane between the bomber and the threat. This was a tactic that took nerves of steel. 2 groups of aircraft flying straight at each other at a combined speed of over 500 miles per hour. At 2,800 yards away, Pierce opened fire. It was long-range shooting. He probably wouldn't hit anything. But that wasn't the point. He was messing up their formation, making them nervous, forcing them to react. The German formation scattered. Pierce dove down through them, rolled his plane hard, and came up behind the last German fighter, firing. He scored solid hits. The German plane started trailing smoke and turned away. But 2 of the German fighters had circled around to attack the bomber from behind. The tail gunner in the bomber, Corporal Anderson, squeezed his triggers. His twin machine guns fired 4 rounds and then jammed. Anderson swore and frantically worked to fix the jam. Pierce saw what was happening. He pulled his Mustang fighter through a brutal, tight turn. The G-forces were so strong, his vision started to go grey at the edges. The P-51 wasn't known for being nimble, but Pierce had learned how to make the big fighter dance. He closed in to 600 yards behind the nearest German plane and fired. The German pilot never saw him coming. Cannon shells and machine gun bullets shredded the Messerschmitt's tail section. The fighter pitched up hard, stalled out, and started spinning as it fell. The rest of the German fighters gave up and flew away to the east. They had lost 2 planes and damaged another one in just a few minutes. It wasn't worth it anymore. Everything got relatively quiet. Just the rumble of engines and wind whistling through holes in damaged metal. "Rose Leader, you just saved our lives." Chen said over the radio. Pierce didn't answer right away. He was staring at his fuel gauge. 24 minutes left. The channel was still 57 miles away. Stevens looked at Chen. "We're not going to make it to England, are we?" Chen studied all the instruments. Every dial and gauge told the same story. They might reach the water. Maybe. After that, they would have to crash into the freezing ocean and hope rescue boats found them before they froze to death. In February, a person could only survive about 15 minutes in the cold North Sea water. Above them, Pierce was doing his own math. 21 minutes of fuel left. The bomber was 51 miles from the English coast. At their current speed, that would take 22 minutes of flying time. He would run out of fuel 1 minute before they reached safety. Pierce made his choice. He pulled back the throttle to the minimum setting that would keep him in the air, and he adjusted the fuel mixture to use as little as possible. He changed the angle of his propeller blades for maximum efficiency. He used every trick he knew to stretch his fuel supply. Maybe he could squeeze out 90 extra seconds. Maybe. The bomber dropped through 13,000 feet. Below them, occupied France rolled past. Roads where German trucks moved supplies towards the coast. Enemy territory all the way to the water. Down to 12,000 feet. Pierce kept weaving back and forth above the bomber, eyes constantly scanning the sky. Every German fighter pilot in the whole region probably knew about the crippled bomber by now. 11,000 feet. They punched through another layer of clouds. When they came out, Stevens spotted them first. "Fighters, 9 o'clock high! A lot of them!" 8 German Messerschmitt 109s in perfect formation, diving down from 16,000 feet. The Germans had put together a killing formation. No more small attacks. This was organized. They meant to finish the job. Pierce saw them and pushed his throttle forward. Fuel economy didn't matter anymore. He had to stop this attack. He climbed up to meet them. The Mustang accelerated, engine screaming. Pierce picked out the lead fighter and opened fire at 1,100 yards. Too far for accurate shooting, but he was breaking up their perfect attack pattern. The formation scattered. Pierce closed in on the nearest German plane and hammered it with a 3-second burst of fire. The German's tail section came apart. The plane nosed down and fell away. But now 7 German fighters were attacking from multiple directions at once. Pierce couldn't cover every angle. 2 German 109s dove on the bomber from high behind. Anderson had finally gotten his gun working again. He swung his turret around and fired. His bullets smashed into the lead attacker's engine. White coolant fluid sprayed out. That German plane broke off the attack. But the second German fighter kept coming. His cannon fire walked across the bomber's left wing. One explosive shell hit the number 1 fuel tank. Flames burst out. "Fire in number 1 engine!" Stevens shouted. He yanked the fire suppression handle. Carbon dioxide gas flooded into the engine compartment. The flames went out, but the engine was destroyed. Now only 2 engines out of 4 were working. The bomber dropped through 10,000 feet. Chen fought the controls as the airplane tried to roll to the left. We have to abandon the plane," Stevens said, louder this time. "Not yet. Rowe's leader is still with us," Chen said. And he was. Pierce had gotten into a savage dogfight with the remaining German fighters at 9,000 feet. Cannon shells hit his airplane, but didn't punch through the armor plating. 1 round tore through his left wing, missing the fuel tank by just inches. Pierce destroyed 1 more German plane with a difficult deflection shot from an impossible angle. The Messerschmitt exploded in a brief orange fireball. The remaining German fighters finally broke off the attack. They had lost 3 aircraft. Their fuel was getting low. The fight wasn't worth it anymore. Pierce rejoined the bomber at 8,000 feet. His fuel gauge showed 9 minutes remaining. The English coast was 38 miles ahead. At the bomber's current slow speed, that would take 16 minutes to fly. 7 minutes short of fuel. Pierce pressed his radio button. Big Bomber, I'm going to have to leave you soon. My fuel situation is critical. There was a long pause before Chen answered. We understand, Rose Leader. You've already done more than anyone could ever ask. Go home and save yourself. No, I'm staying as long as I possibly can, Pierce said. In the cockpit, Stevens leaned closer to Chen. He's going to crash trying to save us. Chen knew it was true. If the Mustang pilot stayed with them all the way to the Channel, he would run out of fuel over German-controlled territory. He would have to jump out with his parachute or try to crash land. Either way, he would become a prisoner of war. Down to 7,000 feet, the bomber's rate of descent had gotten faster. They would be at wave level before reaching the coast. 6,000 feet. The French coastline appeared up ahead. Beyond it stretched 32 miles of grey water. Beyond that, England. Safety. Home. Pierce's fuel gauge touched the red danger line. 7 minutes left, maybe less. The gauge wasn't perfectly accurate when the fuel got this low. Below them, the coastal town of Calais passed underneath. German anti-aircraft guns on the ground opened fire. Black puffs of exploding shells burst around the bomber. Chen jerked the plane left and right, trying to make it harder for the gunners to aim. One shell exploded close enough to shake the whole aircraft. Hot metal fragments peppered the fuselage, 5,000 feet. They crossed over the beach and flew out over the English Channel. The water below looked dark and threatening. The surface had moderate waves with white foam on top. The water temperature was about 48 degrees Fahrenheit. A person could survive about 15 minutes in water that cold before dying from hypothermia. Pierce checked his fuel gauge one more time. 4 minutes left. The English coast was 26 miles away. He would run out of fuel 10 miles short of land. Big Bomber, I'm going down to the water. I'm going to crash into the channel near you. When you go in, we'll be in the same area. That gives us a better chance for rescue boats to find us all, Pierce said over the radio. Chen understood immediately. Instead of turning back and trying to reach France where he might survive as a prisoner, the Mustang pilot was choosing to crash into the ocean alongside them. He was going to risk death to stay with them until the very end. Rose Leader, no! You can still make it back to France. You'll survive as a prisoner there. I'm not leaving you. We go home together or we don't go home at all, Pierce said. The bomber crew heard this exchange over the intercom system. 10 men who had accepted that they were probably going to die suddenly felt hope. Someone was staying with them. They weren't alone out here. This is the moment that defines true heroism. If this story is touching your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Click that share button and send it to a friend, a family member, or post it on your social media. And PLLs, don't forget to subscribe. Stories like this need to be told and retold. Don't let them be forgotten. 4,000 feet above the water. Pierce brought his fighter down beside the bomber, matching how fast they were descending. His fuel gauge showed 2 minutes left. 3,000 feet. Chen started going through his checklist for crash landing in water. Stevens read off the items, his voice mechanical and professional, staying calm. All crew members, brace yourselves for water landing. Impact in 60 seconds. Throughout the aircraft, men strapped themselves in as tight as they could. 1,000 feet above the waves. Pierce's engine coughed once. That was the first sign of fuel starvation. He switched to his other fuel tank, hoping to squeeze out 20 more seconds from whatever fuel remained in the fuel lines. 800 feet. Chen lined up into the wind, trying to hit the water at the slowest speed possible. 600 feet. Pierce's engine coughed again and quit. The sudden silence was shocking. The powerful engine that had been roaring for 3 hours simply stopped. The propeller kept windmilling in the air, but without any power behind it. The Mustang became a glider. An 8,000-pound glider with terrible gliding ability. Pierce pushed the nose down to keep his airspeed up. He needed speed for the water landing. Too slow, and the plane would stall and cartwheel across the water. Too fast, and the impact would tear the wings right off. 400 feet. Chen pulled back on the control yoke, raising the nose. Their airspeed bled off. 120 miles per hour. 110. 100. The bomber hit the water. The impact was devastating. The bottom of the fuselage struck the water, and the entire airplane bent and flexed like it was alive. Rivets popped out. Seams split open. Water exploded upward in huge fountains. The bomber skipped across the surface once, twice, then settled into the water and started sliding forward in a wall of spray and foam. Inside the plane, the crew was thrown forward against their seat belts. Equipment tore loose from its mounts and became flying missiles. Walsh, still trying to climb out of the ball turret underneath the plane, was crushed when the turret collapsed on impact. The aircraft slid for 300 yards before finally stopping. Water immediately started pouring in through 100 cracks and holes in the fuselage. "Everybody out, right now!" Chen shouted. The crew scrambled for the exits, the top hatch, the waist gun windows. On the nose hatch, men climbed and pushed their way out. Chen and Stevens tumbled out onto the wing. The bomber was already settling lower in the water, tilting to the left side, where water rushed in through the damaged sections. The airplane had maybe 2 minutes before it would sink completely. 200 yards away, Pierce was fighting his own desperate battle with the ocean. The Mustang hit the water nose first at 85 miles per hour. The heavy engine, weighing over 2,000 pounds, drove straight down like an anchor. The whole aircraft flipped forward violently. Pierce was slammed against the instrument panel. His head struck the gun sight. Blood ran down into his eyes. Water flooded into the cockpit. Cold. Shockingly, painfully cold. Pierce gasped for air and fumbled desperately for the canopy release handle. His hands were going numb already. Everything was numb. He found the emergency release handle and pulled it. The canopy separated from the airplane. More water rushed in, filling the cockpit completely. Pierce pushed himself up and out of the cockpit, fighting against the weight of all his flight gear and his parachute. The aircraft was sinking fast, dragging him down into the dark water. He struggled and kicked and finally broke free just as the tail section disappeared beneath the surface. He kicked hard and surfaced, gasping desperately for air. He saw the bomber 400 yards away. Men were jumping from the wings into the water. Orange life rafts deployed and inflated. At least some of their emergency equipment still worked. Pierce pulled the handle to inflate his life vest. It puffed up around his chest, and he started swimming towards the bomber. Every stroke was pure agony. The freezing water was stealing all his strength. His heavy flight boots felt like they weighed 100 pounds each. He reached the nearest life raft after what felt like forever. Hands reached down and grabbed him, pulling him up and into the raft. Chen's face appeared above him, looking down. "Rose Leader, you crazy man. You actually did it. You stayed with us." Pierce couldn't speak. He was shaking too hard from the cold. His whole body was trembling violently. Someone threw a blanket over him and wrapped it around his shoulders. They started counting heads to see who made it out. 8 men in the first life raft, 3 men in the second raft. That made 11 total. There were supposed to be 10 bomber crew members plus 1 fighter pilot. That was 11. Everyone should be here. Wait, someone was missing. "Where's Walsh?" Chen demanded, looking around at all the faces. Silence. Nobody answered. Then one crew member spoke quietly. "He didn't make it out, Captain. He was trapped in the ball turret when we hit." Chen closed his eyes. 9 men saved, 1 lost. That was the cruel math of war. They floated in the freezing Channel water for 17 minutes before a British Royal Air Force rescue boat found them. 17 minutes that felt like 17 hours. Some men prayed out loud. Some cried quietly. Some just stared up at the grey sky, thinking about everything that had happened. When the British rescue boat pulled up alongside the life rafts and the sailors started hauling them aboard one by one, Chen made absolutely sure that Pierce went up first. "This man right here." Chen told the British sailors as they pulled Pierce onto the deck. "This man stayed with us for 70 miles of flying. He fought off 20 enemy fighters. He ran completely out of fuel. And then he crashed his airplane into the ocean alongside us instead of saving himself. He saved 9 lives today. 9 men are alive because of him." The British captain looked down at Pierce, who was soaking wet and shivering so violently he could barely stand, and nodded with deep respect. "Well done, American. Very well done indeed." 4 days later, back at the base in England, Pierce received the Distinguished Service Cross Medal. It was one of the highest military honors. The official citation read, "For extraordinary heroism in combat action against enemy forces." Chen and all his surviving crew members attended the ceremony in their dress uniforms. They stood at rigid attention and saluted as the medal was pinned to Pierce's chest. Some of them had tears in their eyes. Many years after the war ended, a reporter asked Chen about that terrible day over the Channel. Chen thought for a moment and then said, "We were finished. Dead. We all knew it. Everyone knew it. Our plane was falling apart. We were 90 miles from home. German fighters were everywhere. We had no chance." He paused, remembering. Then this pilot in a Mustang fighter decided we weren't going to die that day. He made that decision all by himself. He stayed with us when every rule said he should leave. He fought for us when the odds were completely impossible, and then he crashed his own airplane into the freezing ocean rather than leave us alone out there to die. That's not just courage. That's something way beyond courage. I don't have the right words for it. I don't think the right words exist. If you're moved by this incredible act of selflessness, take just 2 seconds right now to hit the like button and drop a comment below. Tell us what you think about Captain Pierce's choice. Would you have done the same? Have you ever known someone with this kind of courage? Your comments help us understand what stories matter most to you. After the war, William Pierce went back to his tobacco farm in North Carolina. He returned to the quiet life of farming. He almost never talked about his time as a fighter pilot. When people in town asked him about his medals or his combat service, he would politely change the subject. He didn't think of himself as a hero. He had just done what felt right in that moment. But the men from that bomber crew never forgot what he did. Not for a single day of their lives. Every year, without fail, until Pierce died peacefully in 2003 at the age of 85, he received letters and Christmas cards from the families of the men he had saved that day. They wrote to thank him. They wrote to tell him about weddings and births and grandchildren. They wrote to tell him that their fathers and grandfathers were alive because of his choice. 9 lives saved. 70 miles of escort through enemy territory. One split-second decision that defined what it really means to refuse to abandon your brothers, and even when everything says you should save yourself. The men who flew these dangerous missions in World War II understood sacrifice in ways that most of us today will never fully comprehend. They climbed into their aircraft and flew into walls of fire because somebody had to do it. They stayed and fought when every instinct screamed at them to run, because that's what brothers do. Brothers don't abandon brothers. Not ever. That bond, that absolute refusal to leave someone behind no matter the cost, is what made them extraordinary. It wasn't superhuman strength or perfect aim or fearlessness. It was the simple, powerful choice to stay when leaving would have been easier, to fight when surrendering would have been safer, to sacrifice yourself so others could live. These stories deserve to be remembered. These men deserve to be honored. And not with empty words, but by understanding what they gave up for each other and for us. By recognizing that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you're terrified. The next time you feel like giving up on someone, remember Captain William Pierce and his Carolina Rose. Remember that one person's choice to stay can mean everything. Remember that the bonds we form with each other, the promises we make, the loyalty we show, these things matter more than our own comfort or safety. That's the lesson from that cold February day in 1944. That's what those 9 men and their families never forgot. And that's what we should carry forward into our own lives, whatever challenges we face. Never leave a brother behind. Not in war, not in peace, not ever. If this story of courage and sacrifice moved you, please take a moment to honor these heroes by subscribing to this channel. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of extraordinary bravery. Share this video with your family and friends so that the sacrifices of men like William Pierce and David Chen are never forgotten. These men gave everything for each other, and the least we can do is keep their memory alive. Leave a comment below telling us what you think. Have you heard other stories like this from World War II? Do you have family members who served? We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.